Hello everyone and welcome in. If you've ever wanted to start streaming but had no idea where to start or what you'll even need, this panel is tailor-made for you. We will be moving fast. We do have a little bit more time than I thought we would have, so we can slow down a little bit. But make sure to take a breath and come back to the recorded panel if you do need the time. Start off with, this panel was initially meant to be ran with both myself and Mythix. Unfortunately, Mythix had a personal issue that came up, so they will not be able to attend the panel. So if you see some weirdness in the script, or some panels that we're going to be flipping through, keep that in mind. I myself am Trust, or Hack. You may know me by many names and many hats. I am a 3D artist and streamer with around 5 years of experience in at least the streaming side of things. And as explained, Mythix will not be joining us today. Mythix is a very good bean, however, you should check out their work. They do have a vendor thing today under the Vibe Tribe moniker, and they are a 2D emote and character artist with around 7 years of total experience in streaming, with 5 active years. Okay, moving right along. Document setup. I know, it's terrifying. First off, open up your favorite IDE or text editor. Anything will do, even Notepad, Google Docs, Notepad++, brackets, Atom, IDE, Visual Studio, it doesn't matter. If it can handle text, it's good enough. You can write on sticky notes if you want to. Just take a moment to, with this software open, or whatever have you, think about like what you want to achieve. See if you can't condense that idea into a single sentence. A great example is like, I'd like to draw in front of people and let them chat with me. If you don't readily have an example, that's okay and totally fine. Just keep this in mind. This broad sentence will be our scope and will guide the rest of our planning and actions. Your scope will serve as your rails and your scalpel. If anything falls out of your scope's bounds, it can safely be shelved for a bit. It's the way that we keep ourselves from making a massive animated panel set because we know we do not have the skill or the time because it is not useful to do that. It does not provide any more information than otherwise would be given. With that, mimicry and flattery. They say mimicry is the best form of flattery, and here we'll be taking that to heart. Not to say you should attempt to plagiarize, but taking bits and pieces from your favorite streamers is how most of us got our start. Like the way Zay's bots run? By the way, Cesar, fantastic bean. Note what you like about it. Like how my little deer can scream across the screen? Note that. And if you want Mythix's interface, note that as well. Don't be afraid to say, you know, I noticed that this guy has a really cool model and I want a model like that. Or, man, I really like the cool deer on the screen, the little white deer on the screen. You know, I want that. That's totally fine. We all start somewhere, and you have to have some kind of goal or notion to even know where you'd like to look. Most of us didn't even know that these tools existed until we looked at how to do what other people were already doing. A fantastic example is ViatoTube. I wanted to make a PNG tuber and get one on so I could save on resources. And it turns out that Mythix was already using one, and they were able to tell me all about ViatoTube, which we'll get to that later. But for the moment, ultimately, your setup will end up being a hodgepodge of various bits and gubbins that you end up enjoying. As we go through the rest of this panel, think about what pieces of our information can help you achieve these goals. It's important to have fun and to not bury yourself in a mountain of tireless work. You shouldn't hate streaming just to stream. It's something that people, I think, have a really hard time remembering, especially later in their career. Obviously, I'm not that far into my career, but it is something that I do notice where people forget to look at themselves and see what it is they want to do, how it is they want to handle themselves, and what purpose they have within what they're doing. And so they bury themselves in mountains of work trying to add interactions, trying to add these extra novelties and features that ultimately don't fall within the scope of the panel or of the stream or of the game that they're doing. And it's really important to keep in mind that it should be enjoyable. It shouldn't be something you hate doing, and it should be something that you are actually happy to do. If you find that it's not happy to go back to, it's really important to look and see why. Are you overburdening yourself? Have you created a community that you can't work with as easily as you would like to? Have you created a barrier in communication that's preventing the ability to communicate with them? All of these are important and are great to keep in mind. Do what you like. Now, moving right along, hardware. A much debated topic among streamers is what hardware you need to get started. I unfortunately cannot give you a specific shopping list as all streams are different. In general, what you will need will depend heavily on what you want to do. What is it necessary? What is necessary to achieve your scope? You'll want the ability to do what you want to stream and a little more. Try to aim for something that can safely play games or run your software with good performance. A super simple coverage, even, of what your hardware does and some stream types are following. With that, it's important to keep in mind, I actually had an entire rant about necessity and excess, which I cut out for time reasons. But the general gist is you don't need the latest, greatest, most amazing $4,000 GPU to stream. All you need is something that's able to do what you want and a little bit more. That little bit more is going to be OBS. Ideally, you want it to be able to do a lot more, but if all you can scoot out is a little bit, then that's good enough. You just need the ability to get it online. Sorry for the flicker there. Hardware. Again, your CPU, for those of you who do not know, is sort of like a physics professor, or like the brain. It can't really be bothered with small tasks, but it is incredibly efficient at handling large tasks, large equations. It does a lot of big math. Your GPU, on the flip side, is like your eyes. It's really good at doing exceptionally fast math. It needs to calculate lighting, it needs to calculate rendering, and those are a bunch of little itty bitty calculations that go very, very quickly. You have to know what color this thing is, what color the light is, blend those little tiny numbers. You know, you have to get from 0 to 255 and figure out which one it is. It's a lot of crazy complex stuff, but if you ever needed to know how your GPU works, it does things really fast. And then your RAM is your storage that goes really fast, but only stores information short term. Think of this as like your desk or your workspace, or like a trampoline. The bigger the trampoline is, the more people can jump on it at one time. And if your trampoline is too small, people have to wait their turn. Or turn even. Apologies, I am trying to keep good pace. A great example of why this is important to keep in mind is that a lot of things that are for stream, they store their information temporary information, like tasks that haven't been completed yet, in RAM. So if your RAM is too small, you might overload everything, and then your program that you're using starts to lag behind, your stream starts to lag behind, your bots start to lag behind, and everything just generally has a bad time. There are ways to mitigate that. I'm not getting into it. I had a section for it, but we don't have the time. You can kind of mitigate it. The best bet is just getting more RAM. Don't download it. Do not download more RAM. Upgrade to get more RAM. Now, the first stream type is 2D art streams, or are 2D art streams even. They have a relatively light performance impact. Granted, though, this can entirely depend on what type of program you're using and what it does. Some run better than others or are suited for lighter tasks. I'll get to what I mean on that in a second. They're much more accessible for lower end computers, as frame rate doesn't really matter. It does matter, but not as much as other streams. And while the stream might not be amazing at lower frame rate, it'll be okay. And these are, like, again, they'll function on just about anything. As long as it's okay, it'll be fine. Like, there are, like, oil painting, software things that take a ridiculous amount of, CPU, and there are, I know, like, really, really fancy painting software that takes an ungodly amount of GPU. But for most people, if you're doing like Krita or, you know, GIMP or something, you're probably fine. Like, you probably don't need anything crazy. It's, I mean, even Blender, really, but that's more of a niche thing, and I won't be getting really into 3D streams here, just because there's a lot, ironically. Gaming streams, of course, are significantly more performance intensive. They are less accessible due to this, due to their potentially enormous impact on all three components we mentioned. Obviously, like, you know, Terraria isn't Forza Horizon 5, and your mileage may vary. You're not gonna need a 3060 to run Minecraft, but like, you should keep that in mind. The necessity to have a higher frame rate, though, for consistent quality and preservation of the information for the game is really important. You know, it's important to have every frame be something you can actually see, or at least most of them, because otherwise, if someone's only seeing like a frame every second, that's not gonna be helpful. You can I personally can get by on 15 frames a second. I know that that's not an enjoyable watching experience, so, but we'll get to talking about frames later on. Um, Now, just chatting streams are a special little thing because they are kind of the middle of the road for performance impact. It's really just dealer's choice. If you're running a simple PNG tuber to represent yourself, all you really need is the ability to stream and a browser source and any small program, and we'll get to those later. It's really as accessible as you make it. If you want the best models with the biggest list of features, you can have a look at BuffPup for this as an example, or Iron Mouse, or Girl DM. You're gonna have to have a much better computer, and even sometimes more exotic equipment. For example, like an iPhone and stuff for really advanced tracking. I'll get to that later, but it doesn't really matter if you're just getting into streaming. And vlogs do fall under this category and may even be serviceable on a phone. There are plenty of people, there's actually quote unquote epidemics of people who do vlogs on their phones. And they'll just find a place that's nice to sit, and you'll have a bunch of people who are doing streams. And it just runs on their phone. You can just do it. All you need is like a halo light or a ring light, and then a phone. Now on to the demon known as internet. Not everyone's gonna have access to amazing internet, and that's totally fine. We will have tips here that may mitigate the problem, but you will not find a solution for, you know, whatever terrible internet you are stuck with. I know how it is. I was on less than 200 kilobytes a second down. God knows what it was up for years. I know how it is. I was on copper lines. It was bad. I can't teach you how to fix that problem, but I can tell you how to make it a little bit better than it would have otherwise been. I wanted to get further into that, but like it's too dependent on your specific setup, and there's not really anything that I can give you that's going to be really that worthwhile of information in that regard. I hate to say just get better internet, but that sometimes is unfortunately the only solution. Check your local providers and see if you can't find like a mobile tower that will service you, if not your standard thing. I know I'm getting a bit off script here, but that's what we did. A mobile provider was in our area far before fiber was. So that can actually be a really, really good option if you have decent signal on your phone. Because oftentimes cell carriers, you know, they're a lot more incentivized to move out to, you know, lower population areas. Next, to exotic hardware setups. So video cards, dual PC setups, etc. can serve to mitigate the overall cost of a one and done rig. For instance, having a streaming PC and a gaming PC will potentially let two less powerful devices run at the same quality as an expensive all-in-one PC. We won't go too much into detail on how these operate, but it may serve to look into this on your own. This was what I was going to do before I found out my capture card doesn't work with Linux. So my server PC is unfortunately inoperable for that. But OBS itself is very intensive, especially if you want really high quality settings. So sometimes you can get away with having less processing on your PC by just offloading it to a tiny laptop you don't care about, or really anything that can do that workload. I have a Lenovo mini PC that I used before. It worked pretty good, actually. All you need is a strong internet connection if you want to do it that way, or a good video card. I can't get into the in-depth setup of that, but I did want to at least shout it out because it is extremely popular as an option. I know a few friends of mine who actually do that system because they run several things, which we will get into later, that have to all have like unequivocal access to resources, and you just can't really fit that on all-in-one PC sometimes. Now, there are many options for the actual streaming software itself, and each is good in its own right. Most people use OBS, so that is what we will be focusing on for the rest of the panel, but we will have a brief overview very quickly on the different types of software, at least 4 of them, that I found that were worth covering. There are a lot more. There are way more options, but I didn't feel it right to mention a lot of those options because they are paid, and because I don't want to give anyone the impression that you have to pay a lot to start streaming. It is really affordable to start today. I sound like I'm advertising for like a pyramid scheme or something, but yeah, most of these things and softwares are free. You know, you can just download it and give it a shot. If it doesn't work, hey, you tried, right? This is a very low risk attempt, right? Starting off, you know, I can't talk about streaming without talking about Streamlabs. Streamlabs is incredibly popular. It finds its home in people who are very new to streaming, or people who have used it for so long that they don't care to switch, which is fair. It has inbuilt stream test functions, custom tip systems, higher CPU usage than base OBS, which is a problem. But basically, just the TLDR of it is it's really good for people who can't use OBS or don't want to use OBS. If you look at OBS, you're like, oh god, that looks like too much. Streamlabs might be a great option to start with because it'll get your feet wet in the scene without really having to wrap your brain around the exact things of OBS. Most of that is just kind of like sticker shock from the settings, but it's fine. Most of it's not actually that hard. It's just really intimidating. If only you had a panel that would teach you how to use OBS. If only you had a panel. But yeah, it started with open broadcasting software. It's available on man, I had to stop myself saying it's available on everything. You can get OBS on pretty much anything. If it runs, it has OBS or can have OBS. It's lightweight. It's exclusively free. They do not charge for a single thing. They have support for customizations just like Slobs does, but you will have to try a little harder to get them. You can't just click a button and it goes. A lot of installers are pretty one-click, but it's just worth noting that it's going to be a little bit different. You aren't going to have as many inbuilt features and things. However, that does give you the access to the large wealth of plugins that are made for OBS. There are some that are made for Slobs. However, the overarching amount that you see for OBS is ridiculous. There's so many. One of the plugins that I use that are instrumental, a few of them actually that I use that are instrumental to the way that my stream works, do not work on Slobs, and they do not work on anything else. They are exclusive to OBS and will only run on OBS. Believe me, I have tried. I've checked the waters elsewhere, and this is what's good for me. There is also XSplit Broadcaster. You probably have only heard this mentioned with Bandicamp back in the ancient days when we used to write on Notepad in YouTube videos. But it's still kicking, and honestly, it looks really reliable. Most people reply that they don't have any problems with it. It runs fine. It is limited, you know, it has limited things for the free version specifically, but it also has way higher CPU usage. But if you don't have a good GPU and you want to give it a shot, I mean, it's not a bad option. You'll notice I'm not hanging on any of these points. It's mainly just because you can feel free to have a look at it yourself, and also you can read this panel at any time, so it's fine. Ultimately, I would want you to take a deeper dive onto whatever these you find interesting. There were options like Bandicamp and stuff, but they're not worth mentioning at the current moment. Not a slight to them, just that there are better options for most people. Another option is Shadowplay. If you have an NVIDIA GPU, you have Shadowplay. You have Uno. Shadowplay is a weird one. I don't typically recommend people use Shadowplay, but if you don't have a good CPU and you have a really great GPU, a good example of this is like, let's say you're streaming on an Optiplex that has been given a really thick with several C's graphics card. You might actually want to look into Shadowplay. You have it and it works great and it uses your GPU almost exclusively. It might be a good choice. It's not really as good as OBS for a lot of things, but if all you need to do is get online, it'll go. So with that out of the way, take a quick breather. Okay. Bias warning again. Like I said, we will be using OBS for this setup, and as such, we need to retrofit this knowledge and advice for other software. However, most of these topics are universal, like pretty much all of them are really, and will function anywhere they're applied. So, and keep in mind, this also goes for anything else. If you find another service, another streaming software that you want to check out, you can take these lessons and plonk it right on in there. You can take lessons from this and put it into Lightroom. You can take lessons from this and put it into Bandicam. You can take lessons from this and put it into any crazy amount of things. There are even some options that you can use to help you understand how Discord uses their streams. So, I mean, no matter what you're doing, you're going to find information here. So, first things first, grab your preferred software and connect it to your streaming service of choice. I'm going to be running this panel as if you're getting it now. I understand that many people's internet is not going to be able to handle that, and I might be going a bit fast, but this is so you can watch it later and have a step-by-step. Most people will be using Twitch, so we shall largely focus on that service. Bias warning again. In general, most default settings from OBS's quick setup should work for most people. That being said, we're going to cover a lot more in-depth settings and their purpose. You can gear OBS to your specific needs. I'm not going to be explaining the absolute biggest in-depth amount about each of these settings, but I will be explaining a lot about them. The reason for that is I literally read technical documents explaining the patent for some of these things to learn how they work. They're not that bad once you understand what they mean. It's just that no one really asks, so no one really says. And so there are some things that are just a little weird. I got scared. My headset turned off for a second because I didn't have any audio coming in. So, assuming you have OBS, you're going to want to go to your video tab in your settings. You're going to go to File and then Settings. I don't know why I didn't annotate that, but it's okay. These options may look a little confusing at first, but I promise they are way simpler than they appear. Your base resolution should be whatever resolution you want to record at, basically whatever your monitor is. Whatever your desktop is, and most people, it's going to be the same. And your output resolution should be whatever you want to stream at. So, for example, I am recording at 1080p, and I am streaming at 1080p. For example, you may want, for network reasons, to stream 1080p feeds at 720p. I used to have to do that. Can you imagine streaming a 1080p or 720p, actually, because I didn't have a 1080p monitor at that time, monitor for 160p and hoping that Twitch will let you use that? That's how it is when you got bad internet. You can still do it. You can still make it work. God knows I did, but I'm sorry if you have to. I know how it is, and we're gonna do our best to help you out, man. I got your back. We gotta stick together. So you will notice downscale filtering. This, you're gonna see it repeated later, but we're just gonna explain it real quick here. Downscale filters can look daunting, but they're really just different ways of doing the same thing. They make your stream resolution smaller. More specifically, they are how it gets from A to B. So like a direct translation, right, would be you just delete all of the pixels that don't matter and then you scale it down. That's not really effective though, because it's going to be all weird. So you want filters to make it look better. Obviously, these filters were designed by different people to do different things. There are many reasons you would want your video to be smaller or bigger or what have you. So it's important to know that these have slightly different, you're not really going to usually notice, but they have slightly different purposes. In general, bicubic has really great results for synthetic video, such as like games, art, etc. Anything that's basically anything that's not real life. Lexos, by contrast, is typically really great for real life imagery, such as vlogs or photos. It's really important to keep that in mind. It'll be fine if you pick the wrong one. It doesn't matter. It'll just be like a little bit more blurry or a little bit more weird, but it's okay. In general, it'll be fine. Now, your frame rate. Your frame rate will determine how many frames per second OBS attempts to record and upload. That's very important. Higher frame rates will incur more performance hits and network usage. In general, you'd like to keep your frame rate to be, in general, you'd like to have your frame rate to be easily divisible by your application's frame rate. For example, most monitors cap at 60 Hz or 60 FPS, and as such, 30 is a great choice for a lower frame rate, while 45 may appear choppy. And this is because at 30 FPS, if you are recording at 60, if your application is at 60 and you are streaming at 30, OBS can just take every other frame and you can just say, that's mine, that's not, that's mine, that's not, and it'll work just fine. This will lead to really good performance and will just make everything look really nice and smooth. I discovered this being an issue when I started to play Descenders. The game was running at 400 FPS and I was recording at 60, which is not a very good division, so it had problems. There we go. So we're going to go through a lot of things really quickly with these. You don't have to worry too bad about these, but the encoding settings are going to be confusing. I know because I wrote it and I was also confused. So no worries if it's intimidating, it'll be okay. Take your time, go back through it as you need to, and if you skip something, it's probably fine. You probably heard the words video encoder before and may not have had an understanding of what they actually are. In short, they are ways of making your massive raw video, because good God, raw video files are huge, and making them way more digestible. While it may be nice to stream all 12 glorious gigabytes, that's not an exaggeration, of raw data, that's simply out of the question for most services and for that matter, most end users. We'll be focusing on your encoding settings and which are better suited for your particular use case. To get there, just file settings output, and I will meet you over there. I don't have screenshots because that was out of scope. Haha. Let's start out by enabling advanced mode. And that's just at the top where it says simple. Just click advanced. And don't worry if this looks overwhelming. We'll be taking it one step at a time, and you may always revisit this later. For starters, advanced mode allows us to access the Twitch video on demand track, which allows us to exclude certain audio sources from our VOD should we wish to. This is typically used to route music to stream exclusively, so there's no chance or worry of retroactive copyright strikes. Seeing as this VOD track is so useful, let's just start there. It's right there, it's easy. So personally, I set my VOD track to 6. You just like get a little tick, 6 there, after enabling it. And we'll get to why later. We'll get, you can see a little graphic right there, but we'll get back to that. There. Now, for audio encoders, it's extremely important to use whichever streaming service, like whatever they recommend. For Twitch, that would be AAC, which should be default selected. Basically, don't touch it. It's fine. As for video encoders, it becomes a question of what hardware you can afford to tax. If you have a beefy CPU, you may be able to use X264, which will generate the highest quality at the cost of massive CPU usage. Most people will find success with their hardware's inbuilt encoder, such as NVIDIA NVENC, or Intel QuickSync, though it can be finicky, or AMD, whatever it's called, I don't remember. As such, we'll be focusing on NVENC. And assuming you are utilizing this encoder due to time constraints. Again, any of these topics can be retrofitted into other areas, and that does include other encoders. It might look a little bit weird, they might have slightly different technology, but they all do just about the same thing. Don't be afraid to experiment as well. Now, the array scale output is typically redundant of OBS's video settings we configured earlier, and I'm not really going to touch on it. It's what you want to stream at. I just use OBS's video settings. It's perfectly acceptable. Now, let's skip over the stuff, the bitrate control, okay? And let's talk for a second about bitrate. Most people have heard bitrate, but don't really understand what it means. It took me years to understand. And it's not that bad of a concept, but it's really hard if you don't have any of the concepts. The easy answer would be that bitrate, is the rate at which small pieces of data, quote unquote, bits, are able to transfer. Imagine your stream like a highway, like on the right, and the cars on your highway would be your stream video, your audio, etc. The bitrate then is the amount of lanes you have. The more lanes, the less traffic jams. In general, your bitrate should be your average upload speed in kilobits per second, though this may not apply with some rate control methods, which I will get to in a moment. More specifically, it would be better to say that your highway is your what you're setting your bitrate to, because that's the maximum that it can reach. You can go lower than that, but it's going to try and get up to that point and try not to go any further. This is really useful, especially if you have multiple people in your network. You don't want to destroy their experience, and you probably don't want yours being destroyed by theirs. So this just helps keep everything under control. Now, going right back up to the bitrate control, this is how OBS will enforce your bitrate limit. A quick and dirty overview is CBR, which is what most people use, is constant bitrate, which is exactly that. It sets a cap, leaves it there. You just don't move it. It tries to get up to that point, and it tries to not go beyond it. It's great, works fine. Most people have a great time. This is what I personally recommend. Now, there is variable bitrate, or VBR, which changes your bitrate to match quality standards. In general, this is okay. It will cause some issues, but if you're doing a lot of networking stuff on the same, like if you're doing a lot of stuff on the same network and you need OBS to really hammer in and lock in to as high as it can go without causing any problems, it can do that. I see that in the chat. And then lossless, please don't. You know how I said you can't stream all 12 gigabytes of your files? Lossless does kind of that. It makes it so that your bitrate is uncapped. So you will be streaming as much bitrate or as many bits as you can to the service, and the service isn't going to be able to use it all. So it's really not a good idea. Well, excuse me, it's a great idea for if you're doing like a museum or something like military, something like that. Those are reasons why you might want lossless. But if you're not streaming something that has to be pixel perfect, please don't. Now, anyway, keyframes. I couldn't think of a better way to describe that than a key in a frame. So I hope you enjoy that graphic. This is how often a quote-unquote full or complete frame is sent. Everything else is more or less interpreted between them. 0 is automatic, which will work just fine, though I found more success in setting this to 2 seconds. I don't have the time to explain how this works, but in general, your quote-unquote keyframes are the like hammer down, lock in. This is like the best frame. Like this is the best frame that everything's going to take from, and then it begins to kind of blur together after that until it gets to the next keyframe. Having it on automatic is kind of wonky, but it'll be fine for most people, but you'll find a lot of success playing with this. I find that most services request to this panel itself is running on 2. Picardo asked for 2, so keep that in mind. Now for presets. Presets are confusing, but in general, they're how long your encoder spends processing your feed. Faster options consume less resources but get worse results. You can kind of imagine this like an assembly line. You know, people have to do their work. If you set the conveyor belt too fast, they can't do their work as well. If you set your conveyor belt really slow, everyone can do whatever they want and they have plenty of time, but you know, the product obviously gets there slower. And then tuning is an esoteric, really weird one. I couldn't actually find much explanation exactly as to what it does, but the general gist is that it does a lot of things in the background. It configures a lot of really weird settings with your encoder and with your other settings. It's relative to what you set up, so just kind of don't worry about it. Just play with it, see what works. For most people, high quality is fine, but it doesn't hurt to have a look and see what else you can do with it. Now, multipass, which is specific to NVE and C, although there are other mentions of it in other places, but it's usually a kind of NVIDIA only thing. Is how NVE and C interprets your frames. Single pass is significantly faster at the cost of quality. Two pass resolution enables quote unquote multipass, which helps increase the quality at the cost of speed of resources. This is what I personally use, and two pass full resolution is similar to the former, but dramatically increases the cost of speed / performance for an increase in frame quality. Profiles are a collection of features that your encoder will use. This is basically what kind of crazy things your encoder can do. Twitch transcodes everything into main, so regardless of your choice, main will always be used for the end user. Sometimes it's better to use baseline. Sometimes it's better to use high, depending on what kind of relay services or etc. you're using, but Twitch will encode everything into main. Before it goes to the user, it's main. So it doesn't matter, really. If you find success on one, that's great. There are some weird compatibility issues, but I'm not getting into that. It's fine. Now, there's look ahead, PVT, or cycle visual tuning, GPU, blah, blah, blah. Look ahead automatically adjusts B frames, which we will get to in a moment, at the cost of your GPU for better quality. Cycle visual tuning sets encoder options in the background, kind of like tuning, to make your GPU run a little harder, but it makes the image appear higher quality. GPU is just what GPU you want to use if you have multiple. So you know, you can choose 1 or 2 or 3, God forbid 4. And then max B frames is higher numbers mean more compressed frames and lower quality on faster moving video, but better network performance. I set it to 2. It's a lot. I don't blame you if you need to repeat that in your head a few times to get it there. It took me a while. I don't know, man. I had the document and it was confusing. So if you're confused, I'm right there with you. It's okay. But we are done for now on the encoder settings. Yippee! That's right. Oh my god, we're only 38 minutes in. We're making fantastic time. We're done. Congrats. You should now have OBS configured to absolutely hammer down on whatever you want to stream. Great work. We can now go on to the fun stuff. As a heads up, I cannot reach chat at the moment. I will get to that in the Q&A, which will be whatever time we have left. Now, you can close out of your settings, and you should be more or less done there. The scenes are a collection of sources, kind of like a folder. Sources are the different things you'll be putting on the screen. Scenes allow you to quickly switch between different stream setups. I don't know why I said that twice. For example, most people have their BRB screen and their gaming screen on different scenes. I would show you an example, but I don't want to break things, so please forgive me. To start, click the little plus symbol on the bottom left and name your first scene. This could be anything. And in that scene, to the right, usually, we're going to press the little plus button again under the Sources tab. Try not to be intimidated by a large number of options. The grand majority of them are easy and self-explainable. A browser source, guess what? That's a browser. A video source, guess what? That's video. A game source, you want to know what that captures? That's right, it captures a game. Audio input, you wouldn't believe it. It captures an audio input. You'll likely want to add a window capture for art streams, a video capture device for vlogs or face cam streams or capture cards, and a game capture for video games. There are a variety of options in each of these sources, and there's no shame in taking a moment to experiment. Have fun playing around with the different options or reading into what they do. If you're feeling brave, you can even use a display capture to just capture your entire monitor. That's actually how you'll use a lot of capture cards. So, for example, I have a cheap Chinese capture card, and the way it works is it creates a third monitor, and that third monitor is where all of the streams go. So that's where it exports to. So if you want to do that, you can do it that way. You can certainly do it that way. Now, for your scene setup, for our tuber friends, which we'll get to those in a minute, you may use a browser source for Fuji, which we will touch on later, a game capture source for ViadoTube, which we'll touch on later, VC Face, VMagic Mirror, and Honk. Just scale whichever you choose down in the scene by clicking and dragging the little red squares. You can also do it manually, but or the rectangle if you want to move it around. And huzzah, just like the pros, look at that. Oh my god. If it's a little aliased or jagged, you can right-click the source and use bicubic scale filtering to make it appear a little smoother. There's other options, but you can choose all the things. It's fine. Just experiment, whatever works. It's fine. It's fine. Okay, we're getting close. We're getting close. If you're exhausted or you're tired, I'm sorry. It's okay. We're getting close to the end. If you haven't set up your audio through the initial setup, hop on over to this familiar settings page and use the audio tab to select your audio devices. That'll work just fine for most simple setups. You should see those devices now underneath your audio mixer along with their volume, mute status, and current volume. You can set like your output and input and all that in that menu. It's fine. Do whatever you wish. You can even set push to talk keys. I have a push to talk key where it's push to mute. Actually, it's push to mute toggle. It's very helpful, very handy. Now, what about that whole Twitch VOD track thing? How do we use that? And well, if you are asking that, that's if you want to get fancy. Now, let's get fancy. Instead of selecting your devices in the audio tab, disable all audio devices and hop out of the settings window. Basically, set everything off. You don't need it. It's fine. Why would we have a microphone? We can have no microphone. That's because we're going to start adding in our scene sources audio input captures. Now, those are designed to capture your microphone. If you have multiple devices, you can do it this way as well. You can use an audio output capture to add in what specific speakers or headphones play. This is useful to create a scene with no audio sources as well, so that you may click it when you are done with the stream and have a safeguard against accidentally being live. I have one. It has a dancing character and it says stream offline. So if I'm ever forgetting to be online, it doesn't matter. You can't see anything, you can't hear anything. You just see a little me dancing on the screen. And that's very handy. It happens all the time where people forget that their streams are live. It's totally possible. And that might be terrifying, but it's not that bad. Just do this. Have a scene that has nothing. No audio, no nothing. And there you go. You just click it and you're good. That way, if you get your online, it's fine. Doesn't matter. No one can hear anything. No one can see anything. Now, I apologize. It's a big block of text. We're gonna get through it one step at a time, okay? So just let's take it a little bit further. Now, if you're using OBS, this is part of the reason why I use OBS. You can download a plugin called Win Audio Capture, which will allow you to use application audio output capture sources. Jesus. This will allow you to define what audio you want to record on an executable by executable basis. If you want to mute Discord but not Minecraft, you can. Maybe you'd like to edit the volume of a specific application within OBS, or even say, put a specific application outside of the Twitch VOD track. You can do that. With a plugin, you can say everything except your music is on your VOD track, and exclusively your music is off your VOD track. This way there's no confusion or worries regarding potential copyright mishaps. Now, this is not to incentivize you to abuse this, but it is to say that even when you have permission to use some music, it gets picked up. The truth of the matter is it's not an It's not an individual person that reviews whether or not you were using copyrighted music. It's bot. It's an automatic bot that goes and finds it, and you can appeal this, but I mean you could also just do it this way. And then even if they do, you can be like, hey, what are you doing? Just be like, hey, I'm allowed, please don't hurt me. And it's all good. Now, don't be afraid to play with filters to hone in your audio exactly where you want. Unfortunately, we don't have the time to cover filters, but I heavily encourage you to have a look around to see what exact setup you'd like. There are tons of VSTs you can use in audio setups. There are tons of different things like crisp or no background noise. I mean, you can even use Reaper or Audacity to do some stuff. The truth of the matter is, audio is always going to be scuffed. It's always going to be a pain. It's always going to be confusing, and it's always going to have some amount of hearing loss because you're gonna accidentally blast someone's ears out, if not your own, at some point. We try to mitigate it as much as we can, but it's just a fact of life with setting up audio stuff. There's gonna be feedback. There's gonna be something that you forgot to turn down. It happens. It's okay. Now, to the thing that spawned this entire panel, stream bots. That's right, everything came from me wanting to talk about stream bots, and then I ended up being out of scope and not doing that for the majority of it. It's okay though. Rather than listing out every single bot immediately, let's outline what bots you'll likely be using and what they are good at. If you're just starting out or only want text chat commands, Nightbot is old but gold. It's simple, functional, reasonably reliable, and it is extremely easy to set up. While it lacks flair and style, it makes up for being the quickest way from no bot to chatbot. You could use it even when you're not affiliate. As a matter of fact, they don't use anything that requires you to be affiliate. So you can just get Nightbot like now and set it up, and it's totally fine. Nightbot will work perfectly fine. It'll function and it'll do everything it can. It's great. Honestly, I used Nightbot for ages. If you want fancy stuff, you can begin using Mix It Up, which isn't as easy to set up, requires a download, but boasts a large range of functions, including their overlay system, which allows you to throw images across the screen with ease. It really is awesome, actually. If you want to just take a character and throw them across the screen, Mix It Up is the easiest way to get from A to B on that. You can do it with other things. I have it set up in Lumia, which I'll get to later, but it's harder to do. Mix It Up is just, you tell it, I have a character, and I have a screen, and I want them to go across the screen, and it goes. If you want to edit OBS scenes and sources on the fly, you might want to look into StreamerBot or Sammy, both of which are a bit less easy to set up than Mix It Up, and they are confusing, but they are fantastic at doing a lot, actually. They can't use overlays, but they can use a lot. And sometimes you don't need overlays. There are ways in OBS to do this. Granted, keep in mind that the more things you have in OBS, the more it's going to take as far as processing power, but I mean, that's with everything. So it's really, like I said, about finding a balance. Now, some other worthwhile mentions are like Wisebot. I haven't used it. It's apparently like Nightbot. Moobot. I haven't used it. It's apparently like Nightbot. Sound Alerts, which lets people throw sounds at you. You can have a gunshot sound, which scares you when you're trying to play a game or do art, like I have for some reason. Firebot, which is apparently good. I haven't used it. Stream Avatars, which lets you have little creatures and people across your screen. Like, you remember those little Shimji things from a long time ago, where you double click the sketchy exe and then it made the doctor or like an anime character run across your screen? It's that, but for stream. BikuBot, which is it's kind of like Sammy, but not Sammy. It's weird. You just have to have a look, really. And then Lumia Stream, which is what I currently use. I didn't cover it in detail because I thought it would be kind of unethical for me to say, hey, here's this thing you can buy for $150. You definitely need this, because you don't. You do not need Lumia Stream, and the truth of the matter is you probably won't need Lumia Stream. I use it because its workflow works really well for me and because I like the feature set it has, but the truth of the matter is you will get by fine with anything else. You do not need it. I just had a very specific setup that required something very niche, and that ended up filling that niche. Now, there are multiple types of ways to express yourself on stream, which is where we're getting into the tubers. The first is obviously a face cam, which if you want to do that, that's totally fair, but you don't have to. You can get a PNG tuber, which is a small 2D character that moves when you speak. You can even get a 3D character, which is called a VTuber that moves when you speak. For 2D software, you have Honk. Honk has like 4 different states you can switch between. Actually, it has a lot of states you can switch between. It's very, very handy dandy. If you want like lip syncing for your 2D stuff, Honk is the way to go. If you just want something that I have right here, where I have a talking state, I have a blinky state, I have a not talking state, I have a not talking blinky state, that's ViatoTube for you. It runs very well, very lightweight. It's free. You can just grab it. I think Honk might be paid. Fujitech is also free, and it's basically like a little bit worse than ViatoTube, but it also uses Discord chats to move your characters and links. So if you want to have like all your friends join in, you can do that with just Fujitech. It's the easiest thing in the world. You literally sign in, you copy the link, and you put it in your OBS, and it goes. Whenever people join, they pop up. Whenever they aren't in the call, they go away. It's great. For 3D software, there's VC Face, old but gold. It runs. There's VMagic Mirror, which runs faster. It has less options, has less features. I use it all the time because it has some features that the thing doesn't, that VC Face doesn't. It's great. Luppet is old. It is the dark god. It is the ancient beast that sleeps in the sea. It is the thing that haunts you at night. But oh my god, does it have a lot of options for a lot of really esoteric technologies. And it's really, really good at doing those things. VTuber Plus is another software that it lets you throw things at your character really easily. It takes a lot of processing power to do this, but it has a lot of options for being able to interact with people, and it has better lighting too. VNyan, same deal with VTuber Plus. Getting a model into VNyan is like trying to be Sisyphus, but if you can do it and you can stand to work with Unity for more than 5 minutes, it's perfect. It's honestly my dream software. I can't work with Unity for more than 5 minutes. And then there's also VUP, which is great for anime. If you like the anime move dance models being able to do all of their things, let me introduce to you to VUP. It's incredibly good at doing that. I do not have anime things, so I don't really have any use for VUP. But if you do, it's great. It's really remarkable what it's able to do. But I'm not that good at modeling to make use of that many options. So that's just the way it goes. Let's get on to general tips, general streamy tips and moderation tips. I will not tell you how to run your community. I will not tell you what is a good and not good decision. And frankly, neither should anyone else. This is completely off script, by the way. This is just how it is. I can give you what works on my end, but the truth of the matter is you're going to have a different community. You're going to have different people in it. You're going to have different things you want to do. You're going to have different things you want to achieve. I'm not going to be able to coach you through everything that you want to do. And the fact of the matter is, the way that I manage my community is incredibly different, even from friends who are very closely adjacent. So take all of this with a grain of salt. We're just going to go over some general concepts and some general advice that I wish I had when I started streaming. So the first off is don't be afraid to experiment. You're gonna fail. Like, that's just it. If you're scared of failing, get over it, because you will fail. That's how it is. But that's not a bad thing. Failure is oftentimes portrayed as being this horrible thing, but it isn't. It means that you learned. You had the opportunity to figure out where you went wrong, and you had the opportunity to get better from it. Every time you fail, you figure out how to do something better. And that is the real takeaway from failure, is that you can always, always, always be better. There's always a way to improve. Get comfortable finding your own solutions, by the way. There's no shame in asking for help, but do so after trying to figure it out yourself. This helps you learn and helps others learn along the way too, because you're gonna get stuck at different places than your friends are, and your friends are gonna get stuck at different places than you are. You can help pull them up when they're down, and you can also have a better understanding of what you're doing. Because if say, like, I just helped you by giving you every little piece of advice and every little piece of information, that's not teaching you how to do the thing. That's doing it myself, but by proxy, right? But if I let you do it, You might not like me for a moment because you see that I didn't help you, but the truth of the matter is you will learn to do it yourself. And then the next time it comes up, you don't have to ask me. You can do it yourself. And then your friend might come up and say, hey, I'm having this problem. And you're like, oh, I know. Wait. Yeah, I know how to fix that. And that's the reason we do that. Now, also, be wary of social media gurus. There are a lot of them out there. I've even been personally contacted by them, and they asked me to pay them. It's crazy. If they really knew how to get big, they'd be there already. The truth of the matter is, the knowledge of the algorithms are passing, and they are only relevant for a short amount of time. You pay attention to what works and what doesn't. Do what makes you happy and keep doing it. The truth of the matter is every algorithm is a dark god. It is ancient. It is lost, like Leppet, in the archives of like Lovecraft or something. No one knows how they work. We have a general idea, but even the people who work on these big algorithms have come out several times saying, we don't really know. We don't really know how they work. I don't know. We think this is good. We think this is great. We've noticed a trend with this. Is that real? Or is that just a placebo? No one knows. Even the people who made it don't know. The truth of the matter is with social media gurus is if they were really that big brain, they would be Mr. Beast by now. Like, that's just how it is. And same goes for me. Again, take my information with salt. Don't trust anybody you see online. It's okay. You can disagree with what I'm saying perfectly fine, and that's healthy to do. Now, next, for actual moderation. Do address fires as they occur, please. Letting problems go unnoticed is a fantastic way to have them grow too big to handle. A great example is like if you have a user that's consistently a problem, take action, figure out why that's happening. If you can't reason with them, then it might be a good idea to just remove them. And I'll get on that later, but if you let people continue to have crossing of boundaries, to continue to have power over you in your community, it makes it an unsafe space for everyone around you and yourself. Your problems do not exist in a vacuum. Anything that affects you in your community does affect the people around you in your community. Remember, you may manage it, but other people are here just like you are. And it's your job as a moderator, it's your job as someone who runs that community to make sure that it is compliant with the way that you want to run your community. That's, again, not to tell anybody what to do. That is just to say that it is important, very important, to take the initiative to make sure that problems are solved, ideally before they happen, but if not before they happen, when they happen. Next, set clear and easily readable boundaries. Your rules are there to protect yourself and your community. There's a little saying that goes around, which is rules tell a story. Oftentimes in online communities, rules tell a story of what's happened previously. And there's a reason for that, because you have to set clear-cut, crystal clear boundaries. Tell someone, no, I don't want this. Tell someone, yeah, that's fine. Tell someone you are not allowed to do this here, or you might be allowed to do this here, or you're allowed to do this here under very specific circumstances. That is totally acceptable. Now, when something does happen, if you're frazzled, if you're freaking out, take a deep breath. Take a walk if you need to. Take a moment. Drink some water. Do anything you need to calm down and then come back. Most fires aren't going to be able to burn down the whole community overnight. The truth of the matter is the worst that can happen is usually you're going to have people upset for a little bit, and it may get worse over time, yeah, but generally speaking, take your own, health first. Put on your own oxygen mask first. That's how you're going to make the most lasting, effective impact on whatever problem there is. Don't just jump into it when you have a frazzled mind and you're really emotional and upset. It's okay to be upset, but you have to be in control while you are. And there's a little graphic there of deep breathing, which is a technique for breathing in a way that calms you down, which is you breathe in for 4, you hold for 4, you breathe out for 4, and you hold for 4, 4 being 4 seconds. You do that until your shoulders relax. And what this does is it prevents you from hyperventilating. It prevents you from getting caught up in the breathy motions of things and getting your blood pumping through your body faster than it needs to be. Next, on these topics, keep tone gardening in mind. This is a term I heard around, and I really liked it when I heard it. While someone may not necessarily break the rules, their general behavior may not be suitable for your community. As such, they may need to be pruned. Imagine you have a garden, and in that garden, you like having roses. Lilies may not be harmful for the garden, but they may not be the roses you're after. You may want to remove the lilies so that the roses have room to grow. Sometimes you are going to have people who just you don't like, and it might just be that it ruins your day every time you see them. That just is the way it is. We're all going to have disagreements at some point. We're all going to have ideas and different philosophies that might clash. And if it is that someone's behavior is clashing very, very strongly with the community, it might be time to have a conversation and to tell them what is bothering you. And if they don't listen, or they are saying like, hey, this is not something I'm willing to compromise on, it may be something where you might have to remove them. They didn't break the rules, but remember, you're not working in a democracy. You are running a dictatorship. That might sound bad, but you are the end-all be-all, at the end of the day, controller of that community. What you say goes, and what you want goes. Now, that doesn't mean that I advise you being power hungry and crazy and all that, or having power trips, but the point of it is that you are there to protect everyone. And whatever it is that you want to do or need to do that is what you gotta do. That's just how it goes, right? We can't give everyone infinite patience, and that's just how it is. Now, an extra little tip is to avoid talking about nearby events, places, or people, as these may be used to triangulate your location or identity, which may be dangerous. For example, if you have a place called the house shop and a local gas station, and you say you are, quote unquote, between the house shop and the gas station, it may be easy for someone to just, I wonder where the house shop is. Oh, that's a local store. There's a gas station not too far from there. Wow, there is a little area that's between the house shop and the gas station that does have a bunch of houses. They talked about living on this type of grass. Oh, I see that type of grass. Interesting. It sounds weird, but this has totally happened before, and it's why so many people get found when they're streaming and they're trying to be like very discreet and stuff. I mean, people even recognize the light patterns on people's webcams to find people. Granted, that's more crazy examples, and that's typically not going to be something you have to worry about, but do keep this in mind. It's really important. As technology improves, as knowledge improves, you have to keep an eye on these new things. You have to make sure that the information you give out cannot be used against you. Also, if you do accidentally dox yourself, just stop stream, delete the VOD, and then start stream again. Just that way, whoever heard it, that's fine. You don't talk about it. And then you just have whatever the recordings are, gone. Right? Now, an extra little added tip, if you get to affiliate, congratulations. Caught myself. Yeah. Hot dang. Payment is usually calculated on the 12th and handled on the 15th. Take the earnings calculator in Twitch and the payout calculator in Twitch with a spoon of salt, as they are oftentimes skewed and not accurate. Extension payments, such as crowd control and etc., are usually handled the month after they are made. So, for example, if someone cheers like 2,000 coins in crowd control, you're like, yippee, $20! But then you get the payout and there's no $20. That's because oftentimes there's a delay. And next month you'll be getting, yippee, $20! So, with that, we've actually gotten through the entire panel in really good time, actually. Thank you for giving me the time to speak. And if there are any questions you guys have, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to answer any. I saw there were some questions and etc. Thought I was talking about Discord communities. I mean, it might be. It's the community in general. It's the community in general. You have to understand that when you run any community, you're going to have to eventually do some type of moderation work, and it's just important to keep these lessons in mind. Yeah, as long as the threshold is met, of course. But I didn't think of that. Yeah, the threshold is $50. Of course. I'm very glad that it went well. I had a massive research document that was many pages long, and a lot of it's green, a lot of it's red, a lot of it's yellow because I didn't know if I wanted to cover it or not. And some of the yellow made it in, some of the yellow didn't. Any advice on getting over that initial slump where there's no one in chat? Act like there are. Act like there are. If you look at like a dancer on stage, right? Let's say you're looking at a dancer and they're they're really killing it. You know, they're good and they're like hitting all the beats and stuff. Like there's a crowd watching them. That's a lot more alluring than someone sitting on a chair waiting for people to come up. Because the truth of the matter is, if you're waiting for 10 people to be there before you start dancing, no one's gonna stay long enough to see you dancing. Treat it like there are people there. Yell into the void. Exactly. Unknown. And just do it. Just do it. A lot of these things can be handled by just doing it. I remember when it was that I had 0 people in chat. It's just how it goes. And as a matter of fact, disable the viewer count. Like, disable it. Get rid of it. You don't need it. You don't need to know how many people are there at one time. It's just not useful. It's stressful. It'll eventually get into your head. Don't even worry about it. It's not useful. Do earnings travel over month to month if you don't reach the threshold? Yes, absolutely. If you are, oh, that's right. Sorry. Previously the question was any advice on getting over that initial slump when there's no one in chat. Thank you for tipping me off on that, Mythics. Do earnings travel over month to month until the threshold is met? Yes, they do. Your earnings are kept until you reach the threshold. So if you were to get $20 on, let's say, the month of August, the next month you get 30, then you reach the 50, and you will be paid out at the end of that month. Yeah, exactly. Imagine your audience, and they will eventually manifest. And for that matter too, it's really easy to get caught up in like wanting to be the most like popular thing that you see, and that's oftentimes not really that sustainable. You can do it for a while, but something to keep in mind is something I didn't really have time to write about or get into is that whatever you do, whatever content you make, whatever stuff you produce is going to set the standard for what you will do in the future. So an example of this is if you are doing XCOM streams and all you ever do is play XCOM, then naturally when you stop playing XCOM, since everyone's there expecting you to play that one game, you will have the problem where people are like, hey, where's the XCOM? You're an XCOM channel. Why aren't you playing XCOM? And then they will stop watching because all you do is play XCOM. And that's not necessarily a problem if you want to specialize, but this happened. Very real thing that happened to a channel called Christopher Odd, where they were playing a lot of games and then they started playing XCOM. And then when they stopped playing XCOM after 2 years of only XCOM, people didn't watch and he didn't get money because he only played XCOM for 2 years. So you want whatever you do consistently to be sustainable. And yeah, don't burn out. That's a good shout, Sixel. It's important to pace yourself. People don't realize how much work goes into the back end of getting stream working and getting stream handled because everything looks simple on the surface until you realize that you're now 8 programs deep trying to get one thing to work because it broke. Right? You have to be willing to, give yourself a break. We are running on non-corporate software. That's just how it goes. OBS is made by very generous people, but very generous people who do not get paid enough to do all of the quality assurance that needs to happen in order to give you a product that never breaks. That's just how it is. Viral isn't sustainable. There is a reason that a virus burns hard, but dies out fast. Steady and sustainable growth for the win. Yep. Good shout, Rage. There are a lot of people who do have meteoric growth and then fall off quickly. Typically, you will not be able to sustain that high amount of viewership after going viral like once or twice. You will get a large boost, but most people don't have that type of attention retention. Jacksepticeye is a great example of when that has happened, where he's had a large amount of people suddenly come in because of one viral thing, one shout out from PewDiePie. That's a fantastic example, and that's not to say he didn't work for the things that he has or the audience that he has, by the way, just to make that absolutely clear. Just he did get a boost, and he did exactly what I was saying earlier, which is pretending that people are there when they're not. See, how do you go about talking to yourself as if you were talking to people? Even if there are 200 people in chat, having no one else actively talking is something I've struggled with. And there's the thing too, you don't have to talk. I'm not saying be completely silent, but you also don't have to. If you don't have anything to say, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It might even be a detractor if there is constant noise in an attempt to make it seem like it has substance. If you're playing a game, maybe commentate on the game. If you're working on art, maybe commentate on your reasoning behind what you're doing. But beyond that, if you are genuinely at a stump where you don't know what to talk about, just don't. Wait for something interesting to come up. Wait for the inspiration to strike you. You don't have to keep it 100% saturated. And as a matter of fact, oftentimes streams that have 100% saturation are overstimulating. Not to say that they aren't popular, just to say that they are overstimulating for some people. Which is why oftentimes you'll see in my earlier streams, I consistently didn't shut up because I wanted always for there to be noise. And then these days I do stop talking occasionally. I know it seems crazy and it seems rare, and there are a lot of times where I go in rambles and stuff, but it makes those rambles and things more meaningful because I have not been flooding the stream with noise as an attempt to keep myself comfortable. So basically just get comfortable with the silence and get comfortable when there's not silence. Just roll with the motion of what it is. If you don't have people to interact with, that's just how it is. You know, wait for people to come in and just keep gaming, keep having a good time until people do come in. And that's going to make it really easy for people to interact with you too. You know, if you're like joking about having fun in the game, someone's going to comment on what you said and you can go. Let's see. I appreciate that, Rage. Trust is particularly good at starting a dialogue with chat. Talking to chat if you want feedback and making them feel like part of the stream is more likely to generate responses. Absolutely. When you do have people in, it's incredibly important to give them the time. Okay, I see. I've just been overthinking it then. Okay, would it be the first time? Yeah, no worries. We all get there. That's just how it is. It's very easy to get absorbed in, what is it? I believe it's called cognitive dissonance. Hold on. I have as a matter of fact, I'm not going to randomly open up that PDF file. The point is you will have cognitive distortions. That's what it is, cognitive distortions, where, you know, things seem a lot more complex than they actually are, or they seem like, you know, maybe there's a large issue that's like, you know, several people deep and it's going to be so hard to figure it out. But in actuality, it's going to take like maybe one conversation 5 minutes long. It happens. Everyone gets, you know, caught up in it. It's normal. My therapist said so. And yeah, see you. And also, for those of you who haven't had a chance to, go ahead and get a drink as well. Get something to eat if you need to. Con's been going for a while. And I do, again, want to thank you for like letting me have this space to talk. I do very much appreciate having the ability to go over these different tips and tricks and things that I have learned. And let me tell you, I am consistently learning new things. Every time there's like a fire that I have to put out or something, I learn something new about moderation. Every time there's a new piece of software that breaks, I learn something new about the software. Every time I have a piece of hardware break, I learn something new about hardware. Yeah, I'll do that in a minute. I only have a few minutes left. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And obviously or rather, I guess I didn't say, but the script will be available just for public in my Discord channel and in Myth's channel as well. Myth's Discord server. You can find my Discord server through my Twitch. Everything is linked in my link tree. That's on my. Thank you, voice crack. Everything is linked in my link tree. And yeah. A very dumb question. How do I ban a user or delete a message? Tired of bots. So the way that I do it very quickly is I click on their name and then click ban. It's very important not to click on their name twice because you can go to their channel and that can lead to vulnerabilities. There have previously been security vulnerabilities that have hijacked the person's channel in question. So just click their name and then click ban or type /ban space their name. Also, on that note, I'm going to do a quick shout out for Seribot. For if you have a consistent amount of bots, or you don't want a consistent amount of bots, or you want to protect yourself against follower bots, there's a free bot that I use, that a lot of people use, called Seribot. It's really easy to add to your channel. It takes maybe 5 minutes, if that. And what it does is it joins whenever you stream, and it automatically bans people who have a low enough reputation and who seem like bots. It's not perfect, but it's really, really good. It gets like a solid 70, maybe even 80%, and even 90% sometimes. I've had a raid of bots come in, and it has banned every single one before. It's not perfect, but it does a really, really good job. Another thing that you can look out for is if you have moderator mode enabled, you will be able to, or the moderation actions enabled in your chat settings for Twitch, you will see a little skip button. I call it a skip button. It's a little like a little crossed out button on the left of the user, and also a trash can. The trash can will time them out and remove their message. It will time them out for, I believe, 3 minutes by default. And the skip button, because Uno, or the cross out button will instantly ban the user. Your numbers drop initially. How many bots? Yeah. If you have a lot of follower bots, you will have Seribot probably take that down a lot. Because remember, it's a stupid tactic, but it sometimes does happen, where in order to get people in trouble, some people will send bots out to just follow. And that will artificially inflate your numbers, and so you get in trouble because now they see that a bunch of bots have been following you, and it looks like you have purchased them. So Siri is really great at making sure that it bans people and gets them out of your follower list, so that way you don't have to worry about it. But yeah, you may see a deflation of your numbers when that initially happens. Don't let it get to you. And also, as far as affiliate goes, getting to affiliate is a bit of a pain. It's a lot easier than it used to be, dramatically easier, honestly. But it is going to take a bit, and don't worry about it. You know, it'll happen when it happens. It's okay. And even when it does happen, it'll take a second for it to update. So you could have already reached affiliate, but it doesn't tell you, and that's totally acceptable. Something I did want to touch on very briefly is that on the topic of hardware, you can just pretty much use whatever you have on hand. Or actually, hold on. Let's see. As a streamer, what are some of the biggest problem events you've had to surmount? Okay, so I will not be naming names for this, obviously, and I don't want to get too deep in the drama, etc. This is not the place for it, nor is it the time. However, a good example is I have had people consistently cross my boundaries, where they have consistently demanded or asked things of me that I am not comfortable giving or doing. In those instances, it is important to stick to your guns and say it very clearly. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't put it behind things. Say no. Say the answer is no. Say that is not something that I'm comfortable with. I wish for you to stop doing that. And if the behavior continues, that is when you do take action. Or even if that just makes you uncomfortable in general and you feel like it's common sense for someone to not do that, then yeah, feel free to go ahead and remove them. I have also had times where I have held off on moderating friends communities because I didn't want to overstep my boundaries with them, and I didn't have those conversations with them. And that's a really good thing to do. If you will moderate for a friend, if you help others do their streams, ask them, hey, I've got a user that makes me uncomfortable. I have someone who makes me very upset when I see them. It makes it hard to do my job. Can I take action, or how would you like me to take action? What are the next steps that you would want for your community to take on this? Or do you view that there are steps that we need to take on this? And it's oftentimes going to end with the reasonable, assumedly person being like, oh, well, then just talk to them and then get them out if they don't help or something. Like, that's how it's gone pretty much every time for me. I've been worrying about it for, freaking weeks, just to then be like, hey, listen, I don't want to bother you, but, and they're like, oh, get rid of them then. And then it's like, oh, okay, I didn't realize that was an option. And this is like a side thing. It's not usually something you have to do. A lot of places are getting a lot better at it, and you probably won't have to worry about this unless you get bigger. I went ahead and took care of this because it is frightening, to say the least. If you are getting bigger, there is something that happens occasionally on Twitch, or other streaming services too, where if someone can triangulate their location, like the streamer's location, and they want to interrupt the stream, some particularly unsavory individuals may try to quote unquote swat you. Now, what that means is that they basically put out a bogus threat to law enforcement, and law enforcement may or may not react. A lot of times, law enforcement have wised up to this being a thing, and they will just call first or go there first. However, it is still important where if you are worried that this may be a case in your future, if you are worried about this, don't feel afraid to call up your local law enforcement and say, hey, look, I am a freelancer, I stream. I'm concerned about swatting. If you don't know what that is, I can take a moment to explain it to you. I don't want my door to be broken down because someone said that I did something mean and because they don't like me. I have had varying results from doing this. The first station that I called, because we are in between a few different counties, the first county that I called was like, what is that? And I had to spend some time explaining it to a few different people. But after that, they were like, okay, got it, understood. I'm sorry that you have to deal with that. We'll keep that in mind. The second county that I called, they actually put me on call with a private investigator who was able to explain to me, like, hey, listen, we know that this happens. It's okay. We understand. You're not going to be in trouble. We send out scouts to make sure what we think is going on before we assume we know what's going on. So don't worry about it. Unless we have an actual reason to believe you're doing something, you're good to go. And that was very nice to hear. And none of that is to discourage you from streaming or to make you feel like you're unsafe, but that is something to just keep in mind later on. Yeah, it is, especially in the States. It has been curbing a lot. It doesn't happen nearly as often as it used to, but it is still something to keep in mind. And that's the case with a lot of things for streaming, is that because the general market for streams and how it runs and how everyone is and what's trending and not trending, how the platforms change over time, it's just going to be a whole different beast year to year. And a lot of the kind of growing pains with that is just learning how to mitigate and manage the changes that come by. For example, the way that payout works may not work the same next year. The way that affiliate works may not work the same next year. The way that partnership works may not work the same next year. Partnership may have a different meaning next year. There may be a different, larger demographic that uses Twitch next year. There may be a smaller demographic next year. There may be more people who are interested in games. There may be less people who are interested in games. It's just how it goes with a growing platform. And it's just learning how to deal with those changes as they come and learning how to roll with the motions of whatever does come up. And for that matter, you may one day update OBS and your plugin doesn't work. That's worked for years and you have to find something new. It's how it goes. It happens often. So that's how it is. For example, when Capture Audio, the one that I mentioned in this panel, it's ancient. It is very ancient. And it hasn't been updated in years. It still works most of the time, but it's the only thing that does that thing very well. There are other options, but they're not good. And so I use the plugin because it's the best and most convenient. without spending money. Because as much as I would like to have the money to buy a Yamaha mixer board to fix that problem once and for all, no one really has that in spare cash. I don't think a single person that I know has 600 bucks just lying around to buy audio equipment. Especially just for the sake of doing something that a free plugin can do just fine. And I thank you for the questions too. Those are really, really helpful. And also give me insight onto some things that I could have added. Thank you. I appreciate it. My research document is massive. I had to rewrite the script a few times, and I did practice it a few times. And I went through it a few times. I've been planning this thing for a while. This panel has changed in variety so often. Of course, and thank you. I'm glad it helped, and like I said, the script will be available in my Discord, which will be something that you can find by going through my link tree on my Twitch. Thank you. And a special shout out for the people who helped me do this, like, Mythix, Rage, Unknown, you had a hand in it. Vivi, you helped me with some of this stuff too. All of the friendos, there are too many to list. You guys have been fantastic. And if I could, I would be able to spend hours rambling about random little different software bits. But unfortunately, I cannot. I cannot do that. I will be available around in the VR chat areas occasionally. I don't know how much time I'm going to devote to that. It just kind of depends on how my energy is and how. Hey, it's no worries, no worries, no worries on missing it. It'll be recorded, and like I said, the script will be available. There is no worries at all. But if you have any questions, hit me up. For the most part, I'll probably tell you to go look it up yourself or refer to the script. But if that is not an option, or you have some esoteric, like, specific questions, absolutely, I'd be more than happy to help. So don't be afraid to ask and say, like, hey, listen, I saw your panel, I liked your panel, what's going on? Or maybe I didn't like your panel because you didn't mention the bot that I use. You should keep this bot in mind. And that's totally fair. There's a lot of stuff that I had in mind and didn't mention. The bot list, it alone was like a page. I was going to go over the individual types of streams and all the different stuff, and go over different types of hardware setups, and go over different types of bot setups, and how you can get different crazy things set up, and just I ended up not doing that because it's too much. Also, as a side note, little side tip, if you want anything at all, any type of, like, software for streaming, don't be afraid to look at GitHub and itch. It might be dubious in quality or safety, but you can definitely, with a little bit of internet hygiene, a little bit of data hygiene, understanding, like, what to download, what not to download, you can find a lot of stuff. The thing that lets people normally throw things at my head are on itch, and that program's there. It's called Twitch Integrated Throwing System. You want to know where I found VC Face? That's right, it was on itch.io. You want to know where I found OBS initially? That's right, it was on GitHub. You want to know where I found Lumia Stream initially? That's right, it was on GitHub. You might be thinking, man, I'm beginning to notice a pattern. What about ViatoTube? That's right, it's on itch.io. What about Honk? It's on itch.io. What about VNet? It's on itch.io. You begin to notice a little bit of a pattern. Alright, I think that is all the time I have. Thank you all for joining, and I will see you on the next one. Goodbye.